I'm going to send something and wait until I get the acknowledgement. Well, in a couple of days I'll get the acknowledgement, and if I don't, I'll wait another couple of days and then I'll resend it. That doesn't work so well. Right? So the other aspect of this, and it's why it's both delay and disruption tolerant, and I might be stealing, might be infringing. Picture one of these little Mars rovers, one of the cute little Wally spacecraft with an antenna about yay big. And Wally is cute, but doesn't have a lot of electrical power, and can transmit to a satellite in Mars orbit, but not to Earth. And here on Earth, we've got the NASA Deep Space Network with huge antennas that can transmit and receive from the satellite in Earth orbit, or in orbit around Mars. Well, if Wally wants to talk, well, 50-50 or less chance that the satellite is above the horizon in Mars when Wally wants to transmit. So the rover's got to hold on to it until he gets a chance. The satellite gets the information, wants to pass it on. Well, 50 chance, give or take. Mars is in the way. I want to transmit to the Earth. Well, where is the Earth? Well, it's on the other side of Mars. Well, okay, I'm in orbit. Eventually I'll come around to the right side of the planet to transmit. And I'm going to transmit to Earth. And it's going to take, I'll call it 30 minutes for that signal to get to Earth. And, bummer, maybe the antenna's on the other side of the Earth. Maybe the antenna is looking at something else, some other spacecraft. Right? So it becomes a real scheduling problem, and I know they're taking bets as to whether I will actually injure myself here. It becomes a real scheduling problem of how can we have all of these intermittent windows that open and close for when you can transmit and when you can't. And when it comes down to it, from the point of view of us networking people, there's not much difference between a spacecraft and a zebra. Right? Because they talk to each other sometimes, and I'm definitely infringing now, aren't I? No, I can tell. You're saying, yes, you are infringing, but I don't care. That's different from no, you're not. Anyway, so the problem with space, it's really big, light is not infinitely fast, and so this send and wait for acknowledgement doesn't work, and I give you, in the absence of questions, Dr. Kruse. Well, I know you'll have questions later. This is a delay-tolerant talk, so you can catch us.
Okay, so I get to close this out. So far we talked about zebras, which we have injured no zebras in our work because we don't work with zebras. We have not yet injured any spacecraft, but we do work with them.
There's always a chance.
There's always a chance. So what are we actually doing? Well, first of all, Dr. Ostermann and I have probably about now a 15-year history working with NASA on all sorts of stuff. Some years ago, I was at a conference, and one of the NASA guys essentially walked up and said, "Psst, what, a satellite?" The end result of that was we ran a communication satellite out of this university for 3 years, which is pretty cool. And so they kind of sort of trust us. I'll leave it to you to decide if that's wise. And so a couple 3 years ago, they came to say, we've got this problem. Space is big, light's not fast enough. We know we can't do, the usual browsing, and we do all this stuff by hand. What Phil was describing. Right now, the way this happens is someone sits at JPL, who we work with, and they run all these little rovers and stuff. So right now with the rovers, somebody sits at JPL, and somebody writes out an order that says, I must have this file, and hands that piece of paper to an operator. The operator looks at it and says, yes, that file is on the rover, and hands it to somebody else and says, make me a command that sends that file to the satellite. And they sit down with lots of tables and spreadsheets and figure out, oh, at this time you can get that command, you can get that file up to the rover. Hands it back to the operator. Operator goes tappity tap tap to the rover. Says, you need to send at this time, and this, then said, now we need to know if the file is there. So somebody else writes a piece of paper and says, issue this command, and the satellite would tell you if it has the file. Imagine browsing the web that way. It isn't very efficient. And so NASA JPL started figuring out, how to do this better. And, without getting into all the details, think email. Email is pretty disruption tolerant. You type it out, you send it, it gets, some part of the way there, if something's broken, it kind of waits, and if as soon as things come back together, it gets sent. So that's why sometimes when I send an email to a student, they tell me that they got it 3 days later, and sometimes that's true, sometimes that's a cover. But it does happen. So what they came to us for, a couple things. First of all, it wasn't all done. There were pieces that needed to be written. And when the barbarians aren't barbarians, they write pieces of the software. The stuff that we don't write, we test. And I can see everybody going, oh, boring.
Yes.
Until you realize, and I've told these guys this stuff is going to go onto a spacecraft that cost about $8 bazillion dollars. Or euros, for that matter. Because the European Space Agency is involved in this too, and the Japanese and the Russians, that sort of thing. And so, if you do the testing and you say, yes, it works, and they put it on the spacecraft, which then goes the wrong way, not so good. So, better do it right. And so, ultimately, there's the software we're working on that we write pieces off, test lots of pieces off. There are 2 nodes of it on the International Space Station now. Not doing anything that could harm the astronauts, mind you. They don't trust it that far. But it's up there, and it's going to get further out. Right, so in essence, what we're trying to do is get space out of the dark ages. And get it to at least do what email can do now. Which is get from one point to the other without me having to tell every step of the way, you need to do this now. Okay? We also get involved in doing some stuff some of this stuff is counterproductive. Let me give you an example. Oh, well, yeah. I can digress and tell my favorite acronym story. Anyone know what a CCD is? NASA acronym. I am not making this up. Wave your thingy there. The thing you showed the thing you showed yes, that one. That's a CCD, a crew computing device. That's what they call these things in the space station. So yeah, nothing's easy with NASA, right? But think of something a little weird. So you're on the laptop here. So when you try to go to a website comes up is good. Website says I'm not found is bad. Think about his example. I tried to contact Wally. And I know Wally's supposed to be on the other side of Mars. And he answers. Oh dear. How do you get where I can see him? He's not supposed to be there. So we're suddenly having to think about figuring out if things are working by, is it supposed to be broken right now? And if it's not, that's bad. I gotta retrain all sorts of students. Because they're used to monitoring networks a particular way. If it's there, it's good. If it's not there, it's bad. You have a schedule, and if you show up when you're not supposed to, bad news. The zebras? If I can talk to the zebra when I'm not supposed to, its transmitter's on running down its battery when it's not supposed to be doing that. got to fix it. So we're having all sorts of fun, redefining things. And NASA right now is wrapping up sort of the first phase. And like I said, we've done, we've set up a huge infrastructure. Some of the folks in the room here have been involved in that. We've got a pretty extensive infrastructure to do testing to a point where we feel pretty comfortable we're not going to crash any spacecraft anytime soon. We have written quite a few pieces of the software. We have written a lot of stuff to take advantage of this new way of doing networking. And NASA is actively pushing this stuff out, trying to get new spacecraft to use this kind of capability. And so, with any kind of luck, they will keep doing it. Never know what happens with NASA funding. They don't know. Nobody knows. Until it's one of those things where somebody will walk up to somebody in the hallway and go, that project you wanted to do that we said we didn't have money, we now have money. It started yesterday. That's kind of how they work. So, we don't know. But our sense right now is that that this is the way they want to go. If nothing else, because a very heavyweight person named Vint Cerf keeps telling them that this is what they should be doing. And so they kind of try to, it's kind of hard for them to ignore it. Alright, so that was my part. And we will gladly entertain more questions if there are any.
What websites do people learn it?
Well, okay. Can I have a mic?
Yep. Absolutely. Whoa. It's delay tolerant.
Yay! Pendulum mic, awesome. Okay, so first, all right. When I'm answering your question, here's the deal. We didn't come here tonight with the intent to monitor what everybody in the room was doing. So if we're actually, oh, cool, I get a T-shirt. Thanks. So if we're actually picking up your traffic, it's a mistake on our part. So we'd like to apologize. But in any case, it's really hard to tell who's been doing what, because I've been over here reading webcomics while the presentation has been going on, or like ESPN, stuff like that. So the trick here is that the way we're doing this, we have no idea what's coming from where. So it's, I think Sam mentioned ESPN, that kind of thing, but I don't know, it seems pretty harmless and infrequent.
But if you don't believe them, feel free to come up here and do a live demo and test them.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So, question for you, on since you're closer to the top there. So what kind of students work in our lab? These just grad students, or who do we work with? What happens to them when we're done with them?
They're never seen again.
Let's see, what happens to them? Do you really want to disclose that?
It's a good one.
Oh, okay. Most of them are graduate students. Some of them undergrads. That just depends on who shows up and wants to participate. We have a number of folks that are actually working for NASA, or for people that work for NASA. A lot of the ITS folks go into various industry jobs and probably don't work with spacecraft, but some of them do. It's kind of the short version.
So when you install the neighbor's internet, so do we share at the same time?
Yes, you do. I'm sorry. When you steal your neighbor's internet, he says.